Inshallah, we're going to be getting started now. Bismillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الخلق وسيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم إلى نور الفهم وأكرمنا بمعرفة العلم وزين أخلاقنا بالحلم يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم ارزقنا حبك وحب نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وحب كل عمل يقربنا إلى حبك اللهم اجعل محبتك ومحبة نبيك محبة تنجينا بها يوم الدين اللهم وفقنا لاتباع سنته واقتفاء أثره اللهم احشرنا في زمرته وتحت لوائه وأسقنا من يده الشريفة شربة لا نظمأ بعدها أبدا اللهم أصلح حال أمة حبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم في كل مكان فك الكرب عن كل مكروب من أمة حبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم فك ضائقة المسلمين في هذا الزمان وولي أمورنا خيارنا ولا تولي أمورنا شرارنا ولا تسلط علينا بذنوبنا من لا يخافك ولا يرحمنا اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين اللهم بارك لنا في أعمالنا وأعمالنا وارزاقنا وأهلنا وذوينا وأحبابنا واجعل خير عمرنا آخرة واجعل خير عملنا خواتمة واجعل خير أيامنا يوم نلقاك فيه وأنت راض عنا آمين آمين وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين أما بعد جزاكم الله خير for attending today. Today we're going to be going over chapters on the rights of family. And chapters because there's a few chapters in the original as-Saliheen that speak of this, and I'll list them out to you. We're going to be going over parts of each of these chapters that I name. We're not going to be going over all of the chapters, and not all of the hadiths in each chapter that we go over. So there's a section on باب النفقة على العيال and then باب وجوب أمر أهله وأولاده بطاعة الله تعالى باب بر الوالدين وصلة الأرحام باب تحريم العقوق وقطيعة الرحم. And these are the main chapters that relate to family. There are other chapters that speak about rights for non-family members, like neighbors and like friends and the friends of parents and scholars and righteous people. We'll talk about those on another day, inshaAllah ta'ala. If you want to follow along in the section, so what are those chapter names that I just listed out? There is a chapter in our book, it's chapter 15, that's titled On the Rights of Parents, Spouses, Children, and Relatives and Related Matters. In our book, it's on page 428. 428. So inshallah, what I hope to be able to cover in the hadiths that we're talking about is to speak a little bit about benevolence to parents and the danger of uquq al-walidain, which is being wretched to parents and disobedient toward them, and also speak about the rights of children in Islam. That's one of the other things we'll talk about, the rights of children in Islam. And speaking about the subject of fortifying ties of kin, silat al-rahim. These are the three main subjects that I'm hoping to address in the hour that we have together. As we do always, the link for the live stream is shared in the group, as well as a Slido link. If you have questions, you could post them there. And I'll be keen on spending the last few minutes in going over any questions that are posted on the Slido, inshallah. This is on the WhatsApp group, okay? So, inshallah, we're going to start with the first subject, which is on dutifulness to parents, birr al-walidain. And of course, it's no doubt that this is a major subject, often spoken about subject in Islam. Many verses in the Quran address it, and many hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we know that parents are an efficient and direct gateway to Jannah for children. One of the ways to attain the highest stations in Jannah is by being benevolent to your parents. And there are so many hadiths that emphasize this and stories from our righteous predecessors. One of these famous stories that we should all know about is the story of Uwais al-Qarani. You guys ever hear of that name, Uwais al-Qarani? Who here has heard of the name Uwais al-Qarani? Raise your hand. Uwais al-Qarani, 1, 2, not many. Every Muslim needs to know about Uwais al-Qarani. 3 people. He is referred to as Sayyid al-Tabi'een, the best of the Tabi'een. What is it? Who is a Tabi'i? What is that? So we have Sahaba. Those are the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. These are individuals who laid eyes on Al-Habib and they followed him. They followed him during his lifetime, even if it was just for a very short time. It doesn't matter. It didn't need to be a long time. Even if it was a very short time. They saw the Prophet and they believed in him. That makes a person a Sahabi. A Tabi'i is someone who did not see the Prophet ﷺ but believed in him. Right? Now, some of these individuals who were Tabi'een, considered Tabi'een, were actually alive during the Prophet ﷺ's time, but they did not see him. They did not get the chance to see him. So they still would not be considered of the Sahaba, even if they were alive during his time period and did not see him. Even if they believed in him, but did not see him, they would not be considered Sahaba. Sayyidina Uwais is one of those individuals. And he was a companion, he was a Tabi'i from Yemen. And the reason why he was not able to see the Prophet ﷺ was mainly traced back to the fact that he was in the care of his mother. He was very dutiful, taking care of his mother. And because he did not want to leave her, he did not get the chance to see the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned him. So there was 2 things about this great individual, this righteous man, Uwais al-Qarani. Two great things about him. One was that he was benevolent to his mother. And then the other thing was that he was tested with a type of skin disease, baras, leprosy. And he was patient with that test. And these are 2 reasons for him being raised up in the eyes of the Prophet ﷺ and of a high station by Allah Azza wa Jal. So look at what the Prophet ﷺ said about Uwais al-Qarani. Prophet ﷺ said, يأتي عليكم أويس بن عامر مع أمداد أهل اليمن من مراد ثم من قرن كان به برص فبرئ منه إلا موضع درهم له والدة هو بها بر لو أقسم على الله لأبره فإن استطعت أن يستغفر لك فافعل. Who's the Prophet ﷺ addressing? He's addressing Sayyidina Umar. So, what is this statement saying? The Prophet ﷺ says to Sayyidina Umar and the companions, there's going to come to you from the area of Yemen a man from this area known as Murad, and also he's also from another area in Yemen. So he's traced back to these 2 areas, Murad and Qaran. And the Prophet ﷺ said he had this skin disease and he was relieved from this test except for a small area that remained. And then he says about him, he is a person, he has a mother, and he is absolutely benevolent to his mother. If he was to take an oath by Allah, then Allah would honor his oath. And he tells Umar ibn Khattab, if you can get Uwais to seek forgiveness for you, then do it. Allahu Akbar. It shows you the lofty status of Sayyidina Uwais al-Qarani. So it shows us how special and how coveted the subject of benevolence to parents is. And you know what? It's something that at times may not be easy. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may test the children with their parents reaching old age and illness to see how grateful will these children truly be. Now, and the righteous predecessors understood this very well. There's one of the other righteous predecessors, his name is Iyas ibn Muawiyah. When his mother passed away, he started crying. And there's nothing strange about that. Most people would cry when their mother passes away, right? So he cried and he cried a lot. But his students wanted to learn, why are you crying? Are you like objecting to Allah's decree? Like, ma yubkik, why are you crying? So he eloquently said this. He said, كان لي بابان مفتوحان إلى الجنة وَأُغْلِقَ أَحَدُهُمَا. I had two doors to Jannah that were wide open for me. And now one of my parents died, my mother, and one of those doors to Jannah has closed. And so this is why he was crying. I'll give you another anecdote. This one is from the life of the Prophet ﷺ. There was a companion by the name of Al-Haritha ibn Nu'man. And the Prophet ﷺ saw Sayyidina Al-Haritha ibn Nu'man in Jannah, in a dream. He saw him in Jannah. And then the Prophet ﷺ, when he awoke, he knew why. Sayyidina Al-Haritha again was an example of an individual who was very benevolent to his mother, right? So the Prophet ﷺ said, كَذَلِكُمُ الْبِرِّ كَذَلِكُمُ الْبِرِّ كَذَلِكُمُ الْبِرِّ. That's what birr gets you. That's what being good to your parents gets you. It gets you a very lofty status by Allah, so much blessings in your life, and so much reward in the akhirah. Now that's birr on one hand. Now what the Quran says about uquq, something very scary. About wretchedness to parents, about disobedience of parents. And of course there's parameters and guidance for all of this stuff. You know, we have one of these scary things stated on the tongue of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, what did he say? He said, وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْنِي جَبَّارًا شَقِيًّا. And I'm benevolent to my mother, and Allah has not made me a wretched tyrant. جَبَّارًا شَقِيًّا. The two very strong terms. Why such strong terminology said by Sayyidina Isa? They reflect on this and they say the reason why that is because the only one who has the capacity to break the heart of his mother or her mother is someone who is a wretched tyrant. Because when you see all the sacrifices and you reflect on all of the things that this human being, your mother, did for you throughout her lifetime, starting from the very first stages of your existence, her body literally was changed and altered carrying you. And then you meet all of that with a sense of rejection and denial and a sense of rebellion. That is categorized by the Quranic discourse as being a jabbar and being a shaqi, wal-'iyadhu billah, being someone who is utterly wretched. This shows us, the Quran is telling us there's no goodness in a person who has no goodness for his parents. And this is a qa'idah, this is a general rule to live by. There's no goodness in a person who has no goodness for his parents. Even if those parents are not believers, by the way. Because there's examples, tons of examples of companions who had relatives who were not believers. Right? Had relatives that were not believers. So, and they came to the Prophet ﷺ seeking his guidance. One of these companions, Sayyidah Asma bint Abi Bakr, she said to the Prophet ﷺ, my mother came to visit me and she's mushrika. She doesn't believe in Allah. And by the way, a mushrik or a disbeliever in the time of the Prophet ﷺ is not like any other time frame. These individuals who disbelieved in the Prophet, they actually and actively tried to tarnish his reputation, say awful things about him, deter people away from believing him. It's as bad as it gets. It's not like someone who's just like heedless and oblivious to belief and busy with work or whatever else. No, these are people who knew the Prophet, rejected him, and they were not very honoring of the Prophet ﷺ. So she asked the Prophet, should I be benevolent to my mother? أَفَأَصِلُ أُمِّي. So then the Prophet ﷺ said, نَعَمْ صِلِي أُمَّكِ. Yes, fortify ties of kin with your mother. That's one example. The other example is a beautiful example. You guys must know Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, right? Everyone knows here Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, right? Everyone knows, of course. Anyone not know Abu? Okay. Who knows his actual name? You know it? Tell me. Who knows his actual name? Abu Hurairah is not his actual name, right? What's his actual name? Of course I know, so you know it. What's the name? Anyone know? Who knows? Abdurrahman ibn Sakhr, right? Sayyidina Abdurrahman ibn Sakhr, ad-Dawsi, right? That's Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, right? So that's his actual name, Abdurrahman ibn Sakhr. Abu Hurairah was his nickname, right? His nickname was given Abu Hurairah because he's the father of the cats, right? He loved cats. That's why he was given the name Abu Hurairah. Anyway, Abu Hurairah came and walked in on the Prophet ﷺ one time, and he was crying. So the Prophet ﷺ asked him, why are you crying? Why are you crying, O Abu Hurairah? So he said to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, إني كنت أدعو أمي إلى الإسلام فتأبى علي فدعوتها اليوم فأسمعتني فيك ما أكره فادعو الله أن يهدي أم أبي هريرة. Right? She came to the Prophet ﷺ and she said, O Prophet of Allah, he came to the Prophet and he told the Prophet, O Prophet of Allah, I would give my mother da'wah. And today I gave her da'wah and she said some really nasty things about you, O Prophet of Allah. And it hurt me. And I left my mother while she said these words about you. So please make dua for the mother of Abu Hurairah to be guided. So then the Prophet ﷺ made dua for her. He said, Allahumma hdi umma Abi Hurairah. Oh Allah, guide the mother of Abu Hurairah. You know, this is the most benevolent son for his mother. Right? And anyone who follows an example fits the same. He was wise and smart enough to ask the Prophet, who his prayers were answered, to make dua that Allah guides his mother. And Allah answered the prayers of the Prophet. He went back and his mother had a changed heart. And her heart opened up to Islam and she took her shahada with her son. She accepted Islam. So this is another example. The companions had real life struggles, right? Some of our brothers and sisters who come to Islam find themselves in similar situations with their families. You have examples among the companions that you could relate to, right? They also had to deal with similar situations. Sometimes it's not that your parents are not Muslim. Sometimes it's that they're Muslim, but they're the farthest thing from Islam. It's also another trial. It's a test. That Allah tests children. It happens both ways, right? Like Sayyidina, sometimes Allah tests the children with the parents being so far away from Allah Azza wa Jalla, and the children need to be wise in communicating guidance to their parents. And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's the parents who do every single thing to try to make their children upright in their life, figure things out. SubhanAllah, you see cases like this. I see, in my shoes, I see a lot of cases like this, where people, they do just everything for their parents, everything for their children, everything for their children. They put them in programs, they bring them to the masjid, they try to find them good friends, they spend money on them, they give them, they put them through college, they get them married, everything, the whole 9 yards and 9 yards after that, everything, they do everything for them. But for some reason, no matter what they do, their children keep on dragging them into heartache and pain, trouble after trouble after trouble, difficulty after difficulty after difficulty. SubhanAllah, it's a test from Allah. SubhanAllah, sometimes Allah tests children with parents, and sometimes Allah tests parents with children. Right? Like some of the prophets of Allah, who their children disbelieved. Their children disbelieved. Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam. Do you think that Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam was not a good father? Do you think Sayyidina Nuh was not a good father? But his own son did not believe in him. His own son stayed stubborn till the very last moment. So it happens. Sometimes you might do everything right, and those closest to you might not accept even then. And it's all in Allah's hands. So, sometimes the closest relationships to us, our family relationships, they require so much from us. They require so much from, they're a test, siblings with each other, parents with children, children with parents, and so on and so forth. And sometimes extended family, aunts, uncles, and you name it. It brings a lot of challenges, but with all these challenges, there's immense and great reward for someone who has the patience and the wisdom to try to at least do the right things by his family or by her family. All right? Now let's look at the section so we could read some of the hadith. So that's some introductory stuff about parents and their children and their parents. And inshallah, next we'll talk about the rights of children in Islam. I'm going to mention a few of the rights of children. It's going to come in the next section after this one. Look at page 428, the very first verse that he shares. An oft-quoted verse from the Quran. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, worship Him, be benevolent and excellent to your parents. When is the benevolence and excellence to parents going to show most? When is it going to show most? The verse tells us. When either both of them or one of them reaches old age, when they reach old age, either both or one, then don't say uff. Don't say any word that may cause injury or harm to them. And don't speak disregardingly to them, disrespectfully to them. وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. And tell them an honorable speech. Tell them an honorable word. Now I want to ask you a question. Why does it say, when they reach old age, don't say oof? Why do you think it says that? Why do you think it says that? You can give more than one reason. Why do you think it says that? Huh? You understand what oof means, right? Yes. It's a sigh. It's like a form of, it's the least form of resistance, right? It's not a shout. It's not a curse word. It's none of that. It's just like, right? I'm just so bothered, right? It's just a sigh of the, So it's interesting that it links it to old age. You're saying because that's when it needs it most. And guess what? When they're older in age, you'll find them at a higher level of sensitivity. They're more sensitive. So something that you say to your parents when they're still 40, 50 is not like something that if you were to say those exact same things to them when they're 70, 80. Not the same thing, right? That's one reason. Someone give me a funnier reason. Why does it say when they reach old age, don't say oof? What happens if you say oof before old age? What do you think happens? Well, Brother Rafiq, what are you saying? Right? Because if you say oof before old age, what's going to happen? They have the capacity to defend themselves. Oof, offend, right? Right? So, so before old age, they could stand up for themselves, right? When old age, you have the power and you have the money, what are you going to do? Fear Allah, right? There's a person who lived a lifetime doing things, whether they're perfect or not. Are parents perfect? They're not perfect. But once upon a time, I could not do a single thing for myself. I couldn't even put a piece of food in my mouth. I'm a sheikh. Habibi. Shh. Listen. This is good for you. Jazakallah khair. Once upon a time, I could not even put food in my mouth. At least they did that. Whether they're good or bad or something like that. Once upon a time, all I could do was cry. And when I needed a diaper change, imagine if the diaper changed, if they didn't change the diaper, what would have happened? What would have happened if they didn't change the diaper? It caused a lot of pain, right? The rash and the continuous discomfort and so on and so forth, right? So again, this is the blessings of the parents. Don't tell me my parents are good, my parents are bad, this and that. No. I have to be a person of benevolence regardless of the circumstance. Now, is there something called strategically positioning yourself to not be in conflict with your parents? Sure, no problem. Is there something that you could say about making sure that you do not allow anything wrongful that your parents may do harm another person, right? Can you stand in their way to stop them from oppression? Yes, sure. Can you be wise about? Yes. Can you walk away and turn your back and cut them off? This very difficult. Very difficult for someone to easily make a decision. You know what? These people are toxic, right? Sometimes people talk like that about their parents. These people are toxic. I'm going to cut them off. I don't want to deal with these parents anymore, right? They don't deserve my respect. This person is a person who does not understand. This person does not understand. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this relationship in a way that I need to give even if I'm not getting. And I need to be patient even if they're not patient. And I need to be wise even if they're not wise. The worst thing a child could do, a son or daughter could do, is deal with things on a logical level with their parents. That doesn't work. It's not good. It's going to cause endless problems. Be patient. Be patient and Allah will give you great reward. Yes, strategically position yourself, fine, no problem. If they're doing all kinds of things that are traumatizing you and ruining your life, and you want to distance yourself a little bit so that you're not facing the brunt of all these things, fine, no problem. But don't cut them off. Don't be disrespectful or disregarding. Make sure you always ask about them when they're in need, and you're there to support them. Anyway, let's get into the hadiths. Page 428. عن ابن مسعود رضي الله تعالى عنه قال سألت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أي العمل أحب إلى الله تعالى فقال الصلاة على وقتها قلت ثم أي قال بر الوالدين قلت ثم أي قال الجهاد في سبيل الله. Right. So the Prophet ﷺ was asked, what action is most beloved to Allah? So the Prophet said, praying on its time. Then what? Being good to your parents. Then what? Jihad in the way of Allah. Right? That's the one hadith that they mention. The next hadith is also a very famous hadith. Every one of us should know this hadith. It's often quoted. So I'll just read through it as a reminder. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه قال جاء رجل إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله من أحق الناس بحسن صحابتي؟ قال أمك قال ثم من؟ قال أمك قال ثم من؟ قال أمك قال ثم من؟ قال أبوك. Right, the Prophet ﷺ told this companion, who's the most deserving of my good companionship? He mentioned the mother 3 times. He mentioned the father once in the 4th time after that. And this is a status that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given parents. Now there's another example from the life of the Prophet. This companion wanted to join the Prophet ﷺ in battle. So then the Prophet ﷺ, through inspiration and revelation, knew that this person had parents and that his parents were very hurt by his absence. So he said, do you have 2 parents? He said, yes. How did you leave them? He said, I left them crying. So the Prophet ﷺ said, go back and make them laugh just like you made them cry. You're not going to join me in jihad and battle. Go back and struggle with service to your parents. That's what you should do. That's the best thing that you should do. And the next hadith, also a very beautiful hadith, often quoted, so I'm just going to read through it. The Prophet ﷺ said, رَغِمَ أَنْفٌ ثُمَّ رَغِمَ أَنْفٌ ثُمَّ رَغِمَ أَنْفُ مَنْ أَدْرَكَ أَبَوَيْهِ عِنْدَ الْكِبَرِ أَحَدُهُمَا أَوْ كِلَاهُمَا فَلَمْ يُدْخِلَاهُمَا الْجَنَّةِ or فَلَمْ يَدْخُلِ الْجَنَّةِ. Right? The Prophet ﷺ says, may he be shamed, may he be shamed again. Someone who is with his parents when they're old, one of them or both of them, and they don't be the cause of him entering Jannah. And they don't be the cause of him entering Jannah. Now, if you turn the page, the one on the top is the one I just told you about. So expend your effort on them. I already said that, so I'm not going to repeat that. Now look, the hadith on the bottom is an important one. It tells us that benevolence to parents does not stop when they die. There is a sense of benevolence to parents after they die. عن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن أبر البر أن يصل الرجل ود أبيه. The Prophet ﷺ said, it is of the highest level of devotion and dutifulness to parents for the individual to reach out to those his late father loved. Right? His late father loved. So you know your mother or your father who passed away used to have amicable relations with certain individuals that were his friends, right? It is part of my benevolence to my parents who passed away to make sure I continue to reach out to those who they were good with while they were alive, those who they were close with, right? This is something actually the Prophet ﷺ would do for Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. After she passed away, the Prophet ﷺ stayed reaching out to the friends of Khadija and kept a good relation with them because what? Because he loved Khadija. This was from his love for his wife Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. Now, on the other hand, the last 2 hadiths that he shares here mentions how dangerous uquq is. Wallahi, uquq, it's a scary thing. We have major sins and we have minor sins. You know, being bad to your parents is not just a wrong thing to do. It's actually in the Islamic tradition, it's considered one of the most major sins. It's considered one of the most major sins. Now you have shirk, top, associating with God. After that, you have uquq al-walidain. It's among the discussion after the fatal sins. After the fatal sins, al-mubiqat, we have this discussion on uquq al-walidain. This hadith mentions it right after shirk, al-ishraq billah. So the Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith, أَلَا أُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِأَكْبَرِ الْكَبَائِرِ قُلْنَا بَلَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الإشراك بالله وعقوق الوالدين وكان متكئا فجلس فقال ألا وقول الزور وشهادة الزور فما زال يكررها حتى قلنا ليته سكت. The hadith says, you guys want to know the most major sins in Islam? So he said, yes, O Prophet of Allah. So he said, associating with Allah, 1. Disobedience of parents, 2. And the Prophet ﷺ was lying back when he said the first 2, and then he sat up. And he said, indeed, false testimony. Indeed, false testimony is one of the most major sins in Islam. That's when you say you're a witness to something and you actually didn't witness it. To bring blame against another party or bring a problem down their way. It's one of the most awful things to do. To file a false claim in the courts against an individual to try to get some form of injustice done against them. That's a big sin. It's a big sin. So that's what shahadat az-zur and qawl az-zur are referring to. That's lesson 81. Lesson 82 switches the discussion. Now, we have some words for parents. Now, Islam does not give a blank check to parents and says, do whatever you want, of course. Are there some responsibilities on the parents towards the children? Of course, there are. There are rights for the children. There is responsibility on the parents as well. And I, as a parent, need to be very aware that the way I treat this little human being is something that I'm going to be asked about before Allah Azza wa Jal. The hadith, the verse of the Quran clearly says, save yourselves and your family from the fire of hell. قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ. Now I need to ask myself a question. If I'm a parent, mother or father, am I going to be the first experience with trauma for my children? Is that what my relationship with them is going to be? I'm their world in their first years. Am I going to be the first in this entire dunya and this world to traumatize them? Or am I actually going to do right by them and give them the rights that they're owed Islamically? Now the Prophet ﷺ tells us every mawlud, every child is born on the fitrah. كل مولود يولد على الفطرة فأبواه يهودانه أو ينصرانه أو يمجسانه. Every child is born on the fitrah. And then the parents come along and alter this fitrah in one way or another. Imam Ghazali, by making this person a Christian or a Jew or someone a polytheist, that's the role of the parents. The parents instill the first values and principles in this little human being. And that's why there's a statement by Imam Ghazali, it's a scary statement. Well, look what he says. He says, الصبي أمانة عند والديه وقلبه الطاهر جوهرة ساذجة خالية من كل نقش وصورة وهو قابل لكل ما نقش ومائل إلى كل ما يمال به إليه. He says very beautifully, he says, a child is an amana, is a trust on the parents. And his pure heart or her pure heart is a clean slate. Jawharatun sadhaja. Khaliya min kulli naqsh. It doesn't have anything there yet. It's just purely on the fitrah. And this clean slate is susceptible to being influenced by whatever is placed within it, and can be molded just like clay in any way the parents choose to mold it. So this gift is a gift that has a hefty responsibility with it. People make dua, هَبْ لِي مِن لَدُنْكَ ذُرِّيَّةً طَيِّبَةً. What does hab mean? Give me a gift. It's a divine gift. هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا. Quran mentions having children as a gift in more than one verse. يَهَبُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ إِنَاثًا وَيَهَبُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ الذُّكُورَ. Allah Azza wa Jal gives as gifts, divine gifts, females and males. Both of them are divine gifts from Allah Azza wa Jal. هَبْ لِي مِن لَدُنْكَ وَلِيًّا. Grant me from by you a gift, a continuation of my legacy through having a child. Right? So this gift will either be for me or against me. Now, what does Islam teach me about the rights of children? This next lesson is going to share with me a critical hadith about balancing the rights of children. I'll just share with you guys a few more things about this because the section is really short. There was a father who came to complain to Sayyidina Umar about his son. And his son was there, and his son objected to what his father was saying. He said the following, يا أمير المؤمنين أليس للولد حقوق على أبيه. He said, "Oh, leader of the faithful, don't children have rights over their parents as well?" So then he said, "Yes, they do." So then he said, فَمَا هِيَ يَا أَمِيرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. What are these rights? So then Sayyidina Umar laid them out. أَنْ يَنْتَقِيَ أُمَّهُ وَيُحْسِنَ اسْمَهُ وَيُعَلِّمَهُ الْكِتَابِ. 3 rights that the child has over his father. That he carefully select the mother of his future children. And vice versa. All right, this situation where Sayyidina Umar is being asked, it is a boy asking about his rights on his father. Now the same thing applies to a mother, that she be very careful to select who the father of his children, who the father of her children are going to be. So she needs to be very careful with that. Who's she going to choose? Is she going to choose someone who doesn't pray? Is she going to choose someone who doesn't fear Allah? Is she going to choose someone for their appearance or for their money just because it's going to make her feel good? Or so she thinks. And she's going to forget about her future children. That's an awful decision to make. So Sayyidina Umar said that he carefully chooses his children's mother. And that he carefully chooses for him a good name. And that he teaches him the book. These are words of wisdom that show the rights of children on their parents. Now, what are some other rights? I'm going to list these out to you and then we'll read the section. One right for children in Islam is that the parents protect the soul before they even protect the body, right? Sometimes it's looked at reversed. I need to put food on the table, right? I need to put them in a good school. I need to make sure they get into a good college. I need to work and earn money. These are all important things and they're a form of jihad and great reward indeed. However, the greatest right that my children have on me is that I protect their souls before I even think of protecting their bodies. Before worrying about charities, I need to worry about the right of discipline. Right? This is the second one. So I need to worry about their souls and their iman and their Islam. I'm going to make sure I do everything I can to set them up to be connected with the Book of Allah, the way of His Prophet, the life of His Prophet, connected with the masjid, surrounded in a healthy environment that teaches them about Allah and about good things. And then the second thing I'm going to be responsible for is disciplining them in a way that reforms their etiquette. That's something that I'm responsible for, right? So, and there's a hadith about that as well. Now, the section tells us about a critical right that children have on their parents. And that is to be fair between the children. To be fair between the children. And يَعْدِلَ فِي الْقِسْمَةِ بَيْنَ الْأَوْلَادِ. This is a critical right. Whether that is in terms of في قسمة الأموال والهدايا, giving out gifts and money, be fair between all your children and what you give them. Or in terms of the time you give them, or the energy or the effort you give them. There's a hadith. Look at page 433. What does this hadith say? عن النعمان بن بشير رضي الله تعالى عنه أن أباه أتى به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال إني نحلت ابني هذا غلاما كان لي فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أكل ولدك نحلته مثل هذا فقال لا فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فأرجعه. In some of the other variations of the hadith, it says إذن لا تشهدني على جور. He says the Prophet ﷺ said فلا تشهدني إذن فإني لا أشهد على جور. Prophet ﷺ said, don't make me a witness to this. All right, so what's happens here? The story, what's the story? There's this companion in Nu'man ibn Bashir. He was beloved to his father. What was his father's name? Bashir. His father wanted to give him a gift. And he didn't give all his children the same gift. So who came and objected? The mother. The mother objected. She said, no, you're not going to give Nu'man something that you didn't give our other kids. So he said, no, I'm going to give it to him. So then she said, no, I'll only accept and approve if you actually get the Prophet ﷺ to accept and approve. So then he went to the Prophet. He thought it was an easy thing. Well, it's my money, it's my stuff. I could give my children whatever I want. I want to give this one and forget about the rest. It's my choice, right? So then the Prophet ﷺ said to Bashir, did you give all your children a gift like this? He said, no. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, then don't make me a witness to this gift, because I will not be a witness to oppression and wrongdoing. This is a form of injustice, to treat the children unfairly. Give some, don't give others. Prophet ﷺ said, don't do this, give it back. Now, in the other variation that I was talking about, he says, the Prophet ﷺ went on to say, اتقوا الله واعدلوا في أولادكم. Be conscious of Allah and be fair with your children. So this is one of the great rights that children have over their parents, that they're fair in their money, in their time, in their effort, between all of their children. Of course, besides the importance of this for the children, it actually causes a lot of problems between siblings. When parents favor one child over the other, it causes pain. It causes envy. It causes hatred between the children. So this is one of the most corrosive things to families, when parents are not fair. Sometimes you'll find this parent will choose a few kids and the other parent will choose another kid. 1 and 2 are the favorite of the father. 3 and 4 are the favorite of the mother. Awful approach. Now, there's something here. There's something here. Sometimes you can't help it. One of the kids is naturally is just shaping into being a really good person. He has good character. He or she has good character. They listen. They're helpful. They're compassionate. They fear Allah. And the other kid is causing 1,000,001 problems. Always rebellious. Always speaking out. Always, So naturally, like if you had to deal with two human beings, forget about them being your kids. This person is always giving me a headache. And that person is always helping me out. As a human being, who are you going to like? Of course, the one that's always helping you out. But now what do you have to do as a parent? Even if I'm inclined to like one of the kids, I should not show this. I should be fair. I should not show this, especially between the other kids, right? So even if I have justification to like one over the others, I should not allow this to cause me injustice. So it's not about your like or your love. Right? Again, it's the heart. Like sometimes you may be inclined to love one. But now how should you act with your words and with your actions? Sometimes it's over deen, which would be the least severe of situations, right? Of course you're going to be attracted to taqwa versus sinfulness. But sometimes it's over dunya. Oh, I love this child. Why? Because this child's the doctor, this child's the successful with the degree. The other is a loser. He or she did not even graduate college. I'm ashamed by that child. I don't want to have anything to do with that. A'udhu billah. A'udhu billah. You never know. Perhaps the child that you had that, subhanallah, لا تدرون أيهم أقرب لكم نفعا. You don't know which of these children are going to benefit you most in your akhirah. The child that you had that ended up becoming some blue-collar worker, whatever it is, a gas station attendant, a taxi driver, whatever it is, would be far better for you in your dunya and your akhirah than the son or daughter that you had that ended up making millions, right? So that happens to people all the time. People, they look at the outward shell of things, and the very successful son or daughter ends up being the most hurtful and the one that turns their back the most. You never know, right? So, you want to say something? Go ahead. What's your question? Okay. Uh-huh. They waited an extra 5 or 6 years to get it for him? They will eventually. All right. So of course, giving, sometimes parents, they have discretion, right? It doesn't mean that I need to get identical gifts for all my kids at the same exact time. Now, for example, say if I have a bunch of children and they're like big age gap, right? The older kids, they're established and they have money, they work, they built themselves up. Now the young one it needs help and support, extra support, struggling, needs extra attention because maybe they have certain things certain challenges that the others didn't have, right? So now, can the parent give in this type of special circumstance? Because this last child needs more support in college, needs more money spent because of XYZ reason. Is that possible? Yes. Is it possible that circumstances change? Maybe, مثلا, say if I have 3 kids, 4 kids, and when the 2 older kids were young, I had a better financial situation and I was able to do more things for them. But then the time passes, 10, 15, 20 years later, Allah blesses me with kids that are much younger than the older ones. And now my circumstances changed. I'm not able to do X, Y, or Z. Or maybe sometimes, maybe one of the kids achieved what they achieved and got the gifts that they got as a compensation for their hard work. And maybe the one that came in the end is a slacker and he's not doing or she's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So should I reward the slacker just like I reward the one who worked really hard? No, there's some element of discretion. But we're saying in the baseline, can you choose to favor some of the kids over the others? The answer, you should not, right? So this is the general principle. Say if some of the children are wealthy, like say this might happen at the time of old age. Parents are getting ready to leave this dunya. And all the kids are established in their lives. They have they have a lot of money, good careers. But then we have one of the kids, very poor, not able to figure himself out. And this child needs more money, needs more support. Can the parent do this in this type of situation? If we're talking about true faqr, true poverty, I'm not talking about, okay, this one, I just want to give him a little bit more because he's a little bit less. He's good, but he's a little bit less than the others, so I want to give him more. No, don't do that. But if it's true poverty, or if it's for a legitimate cause, then in this case, we can go against the rule. And the better thing for the parents to do in this type of situation is to speak to the other children about it, to let them know, look, I want to give your youngest brother, your youngest sister, XYZ, because you see their situation, and please know that this is not for any favoritism or anything else. They should explain. They should have this type of conversation with their children, so as to not leave any feelings in the heart. Good? Yallah. Wait the extra 5-6 years to get what you're looking to get, inshallah. Okay? Jazakallah khair. So this is the end of the section on the rights of children. And the last subject, which is the rights of the rahim, let's see, we got questions. It's 8:48. Did anyone have any questions up until now, by the way? Let me look at the Slido, if anyone posted anything there. If you guys posted questions, we'll stop with reading the hadiths, and then we'll answer the questions here. We do have questions here. The first question is, do you know of any resources that we can use to learn and get familiar with more Sahaba? I'm 1/5 through the sealed nectar and can't seem to make a connection. Yeah, there are many books about the companions, by the way. In Arabic, there's a ton. But, what English resources? There's this series of books. It's the author, I remember her name was Noura Durkee, I think it was. It's called Those Promised Paradise. I remember I read this book a long time ago. Very, very well written, nice written about some of the companions. Right? It's some of the companions around the Prophet ﷺ. There's another book, it's very famous in Arabic and it's translated to English. Rijal Hawla Rasul. Men around the Messenger. Men around the Messenger. And then there is another one, that's about women around the messenger. Nisa hawla Rasul. Yeah, there's another book about. This is like a resource. It's a very massive book, and it talks about a lot of things. Hayat al-Sahaba, the lives of the companions. It's also translated. It's a massive work. But the other books I mentioned to you are easier and more accessible. They're about the lives of the companions. So there are books, if you read The Sealed Nectar, that's a book of seerah. So you're not going to hear much about the personal lives of the companions. There's also some books that are written about specific Sahaba. Like there's a series, there's a scholar from Libya, Shaykh Ali as-Salabi. He has books about the four Khulafa. And I think they're translated into English. He has one book about Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and he has another book, it's actually a two-volume work about Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab. Very detailed. It's printed by the International Islamic Publishing House, IIPH. And there's other books about other companions. You'll find books about Sayyidah Aisha, radiallahu anha, about Sayyidina Uthman, about Sayyidina Ali. We should learn about these companions. There's so much to say about them. And the more that we learn about them, the more that we'll be able to connect with them. So that's about that question. The next question, any guidance from the Quran and Sunnah on how to protect our children from abuse given recent events? How do we know who to entrust our children with? It's actually a really big test. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us. And there's a lot to say about that subject, the recent events that have happened in the Muslim community that have caused some level of trauma. Now, part of what there is to say is that we need to be very careful in the way that we engage with our deen. A lot of people approach Islam from the standpoint of a feel-good relationship with the religion. I just want to hear things that are going to make me feel good, right? They commercialize religion. It becomes about presentation, media, short videos, clip. They're not really trying to learn, right? They're trying to, have a good time and an experience. I should be very careful with that. I should actually look for people who have credentials that could actually teach me about Allah. One thing that you could possibly do is look for someone who's actually recognized by the scholarly community, by reputable sources. You should be very careful with that. And beyond that, how can you know who to trust your children with? You can never really know who to trust your children with 100% for certain. But if you're a vigilant parent and you look for signs, if there's any red flags or anything to be concerned about, then hopefully Allah Azza wa Jalla will protect your children. And usually in that, and besides that, usually there'll be signs. Usually there'll be some type of sign about what I should be worried about, what I should not be worried about, and I should not be silent if I see a sign. The other thing is, Islam puts healthy boundaries for a reason. I should be careful. Is it a male teaching a female, or a female teaching a male, or however it is? I should be very careful with the setting. How private is it? Is there any way to make sure that whoever's teaching my son or my daughter would not cross the boundaries in any immoral way? I should seek that. I should not be too trusting and oblivious to what people could possibly do. Sometimes you'll do everything to be precautious, and still you won't notice certain things. So these are some things that we could say about recent events. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us. And it just goes to show you that anyone could possibly fall into wrongdoing. No one's beyond accountability. There's checks and balances in Islam for a reason. There's no one who is ma'soom and protected except the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was protected from sin. Anyone else, well, they could make mistakes and they could violate certain things. That's why it's very, very important to be very mindful of my heart. One of the other signs of who you could trust with your children, how much does that said person apply of the religion on themselves? If they're a person who you're not aware of their character, or their character says the opposite, then you should be very, very careful of that. Do not learn your deen from someone who does not apply it themselves. Do not learn your deen from someone who does not prioritize spirituality, the example of the Prophet, the legacy of the Prophet ﷺ. Do not learn your deen from those types of individuals. Be very careful. That's a red flag in itself. So these are a few things that I would say about this issue. And may Allah Azza wa Jal protect us from all fitan and all trials. Allahumma ameen. That's the second question. Does anyone have any direct questions? There's a few more that are over here in the Slido. Anyone have any direct questions they'd like to ask? Any direct questions? All right, there's another question that's here. If there is clear emotional neglect from a father growing up that leads to a daughter to do promiscuous things as a result, but now understands where it was. I don't exactly know, I don't know if there's a typo here or something like that. I don't know what this person's asking exactly. But in general, if there's emotional neglect and it causes the daughter pain and she makes some mistakes, Allah knows His servants, by the way. Allah knows His servants. If a child, son or daughter, falls into wrongdoing because they've been influenced by certain realities in their life, that would be a mitigating circumstance, as opposed to someone wrongfully choosing the worst things to do because they wanted to do it. Now, of course, وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى is something the Quran teaches. The Quran teaches, look, no burden will be carried by another. I am responsible for my choices. I cannot deflect blame of every wrongdoing I do on my parents. I can't do that. It's not right. Especially if I'm talking about someone who's of age. That's it. I'm past my initial years of growth and now I'm an adult. I can't continue to blame my parents. Oh, it's all my parents' fault. It's because my father did this to me and my mother did that. Don't do that. It's not what you should do. I'm responsible for me. Now, Allah knows if I went through something traumatic and it changed my life, maybe perhaps this would lessen the weight of my sin by Him. But Allah knows. Who knows how Allah judges people? He knows, subhanAh. I don't know how Allah judges people. This is the best that we can understand it. Wallahu alam. Here's a last question I'll answer. My father passed away in my teens before I became Muslim. Is there anything I can do for him, or do I focus on inviting my living family to Islam? Look, may Allah Azza wa Jal be with you and alleviate your pain. If your father passed away not upon Islam, then in terms of your actions, the best you could do is leave his affair to Allah, right? You should not do anything beyond that because we're not allowed to. As long as we don't know that he died as a Muslim, I should not pray. I should not do anything after that. I should say to myself the following: Oh Allah, my father returned to you and you are better aware of him and more merciful of him than I could ever be. Right? Of course, sometimes people say this is lack of mercy. What do you mean? Don't pray for your father. Right? You are better aware of him and more merciful with him than I can ever be. So deal with him on the basis of your knowledge and your mercy and your justice. Just leave it to Allah. I don't know. Do I know where fulan or fulan or fulan is going to be in the hereafter? I don't know. Maybe perhaps Allah will forgive one person and punish another. I have no idea. I cannot judge that. But if the person does not leave this dunya upon Islam, that's where my role ends. That's the best I could do. Oh Allah, I leave his affair to you. And you're better aware and you're more just and more merciful than I. That's what you should do. And then you should focus on giving da'wah to the rest of your family and realize you are in good company from among the companions and many of our righteous predecessors who also had to deal with a similar reality. May Allah Azza wa Jal reward you and bless you. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma ameen. Inshallah, we're going to stop here. It's 9 o'clock, so we're done with our session today. And we'll leave the subject of fortifying ties of kin for next time, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Nadia. Do we still have copies of the book, or are they? So you could go down with Sister Nadia, and she'll give you a copy of the book. Okay, you're welcome.